Welcome to Stream of Conscience, brought to you by Democracy for America, Fairfield County, where we believe that change is possible and you can make it happen. I'm your host, John Hartwell. Our guests today are board members of the Public Housing Residents Network, also known as PHRN, a statewide organization that seeks to educate, empower, and unite public housing residents throughout Connecticut. PHRN is a project of the Connecticut Housing Coalition and is open to participation from any public housing resident. Daisy Franklin is Vice Chair of PHRN. She's also a board member of the National Low-Income Housing Coalition and the Connecticut Housing Coalition. She chairs the Housing Committee of the Norwalk NAACP and is the Human Relations Commissioner for the City of Norwalk. Alberta Witherspoon is a resident commissioner for the New Haven Housing Authority and a member of its Disability Advisory Committee. She's co-chair of the Resident Advisory Board and also co-chair of the Democratic Town Committee's 7th Ward. Daisy, Alberta, welcome to Stream of Conscience.
Thank you.
So, the Public Housing Resident Network, how did it get started?
It got started just as you had introduced us through Connecticut Housing Coalition. Many people had called them about issues dealing with residents, which they began to realize that residents, had a lot of issues and they needed a voice when it came to those certain issues. Issues like maybe with the landlord, they may have had problems with their rent, they may have had problems with maintenance, or their tenant commission, their tenant council, the body of residents that are elected by the residents to represent them, and they may not have gotten justice on some of the things they want. So they would call Connecticut Housing Coalition because it was the only place that they may have found to call. And Connecticut Housing Coalition finding out that and realizing that residents needed something, they thought that maybe it would be good to experiment and have this group of residents come together and start working on behalf of residents. That's how we were formed.
So Alberta, how long has the organization been in existence?
About 7 years.
Okay.
It's about 7 years.
And where you have chapters around the state, right?
We're a statewide organization.
Okay. So where are the chapters? Do you have local organizations?
We have East Hartford, Bridgeport, Norwalk, New Haven, Meriden, Wallingford. Mm-hmm. I think we're organizing in Stamford too.
Okay, so you're all over the state.
Yes.
Yeah. And those were chapters that she mentioned, because we have members throughout the state.
Yes.
Okay, so an individual member can belong to this without belonging to a chapter.
Yes.
Correct.
Right. And so how does a chapter get started? What is it that you do to organize? You say you're moving into Stamford now. What's going to happen?
One of the staff people, they are called organizers, who is Les Williams and Kim McLaughlin. They're organizers for PHRN.
Okay.
They would go to the town and they would organize the group, and then they would bring some of the PHRN board members, and we would help to organize them.
And what do you mean when you say we're going to organize them? What goes on?
We would teach them how to organize their tenant council, how to make their tenant council stronger, and it's kind of speaking for the people who don't have a voice.
Okay.
We educate them on how to do procedures, and
it's a very complicated world, isn't it? And because the housing authorities, some of this is federal, right? And
yes,
some of it's local, and there's lots of rules and regulations, state as well. You need to understand the rules and regulations in order to navigate and get what you need.
Yes.
Yeah. And one of the other ways that they become a chapter, many of them are members of PHRN, and then they'll ask for the organizer or PHRN to become more involved with helping them become, like Alberta mentioned, an organized and elected body. And then, they'll become a chapter with PHRN, where we begin to have our meetings, and we'll represent them, and they'll represent us as a chapter.
How many members does PHRN have in the state?
Probably about 400.
About 450 members.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Yes.
And in order to belong, what does someone need to do?
You just fill out an application, and for low income, it's $5 a year. And for organizations like the Housing Authority, it's $100. Some memberships are $25. It depends on what sector you're coming from.
Right, so $5 is obviously pretty affordable for most
Yes,
folks.
it is.
Yeah,
For the information you get.
right.
And like anything, being a member, if you're an active member, you really get more out of it.
Yes.
They can send their $5 in and be a member, but you really are a member when you do participate, coming to the meetings. And with our members, they're not just members, they help us with the work that we do, because it's the board, but the board, we're a body, so you can't do much without, if one person is just the head and you don't have the feet and the arms and legs. So it's all of us that make up PHRN, and
You
our
can't-
members are very important.
You can't be a leader if you don't have some followers.
Correct.
That's right.
Right.
Correct.
So let's talk about some of the successes that PHRN has had, because in a very short amount of time that you've been organizing, obviously your organization has grown and your chapters are growing, but I think you're also having success in getting some laws passed up in Hartford and some changing the way people see the residents of public housing. Can you talk about that?
I'll speak. One of our laws that we did get changed was the resident tenant commissioner,
Okay.
which was one of them that we always did have a resident tenant commissioner, but the law that was changed was that person would become elected by the members of the housing authority, the residents, where that person would one time be appointed by their mayor or council or selectman. Now that person would be elected, and one of the reasons we did that because residents weren't feeling happy about the person that was appointed. They wasn't really they didn't have an allegiance, or they weren't really committed as they would have been if they were elected by the residents. They didn't come to meetings. They didn't really give any response back when residents would ask them to come to do certain things, or if they had questions, the residents would sit back and see them vote. And not all resident commissioners were like that, but those that our residents were dealing with had that problem. So we came together as a group. We agreed to do it. We went up to Hartford. We made changes by going to the housing committee meetings and dealing with all parties that would take place, like the housing authorities, the municipalities, and with senators that we had to have that talk with all of them. So it was a lot of meetings, a lot of rewriting laws. We had we have a fair housing officer, Rafi, and we had Jeff Reiser and a lobbyist, Kate. I don't remember the last names, but they worked with us to help us when we was writing a law. The organizers, as well as our president, James White, we all worked together, and board members also, it was a teamwork. So we all put in what we wanted in this law to help residents to have someone to represent them when it came to voting on our rents or anything, maintenance, or how it would affect a resident in where they live at.
Did you, Alberta, do any testifying up in
Yes,
Hartford?
I did. I testified before the Housing Committee.
Okay, and what did you tell them?
I told them we needed to have the ability to elect our own tenant commissioner, because the tenant commissioner doesn't always work for the residents. They feel indebted to the person who appointed them. And the residents weren't getting what they should have. So that's one of the reasons I testified.
And talk. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Diz.
I also testified, but one of the things what I was saying, and one of the things that was said by my state representative Bruce Morris was, it's democracy. Residents should be able to elect who represents them.
And so Bruce Morris here in Norwalk was helpful to you in this fight?
Yeah, Bruce Morris and
Senator Green,
Senator
Gomes.
Senator Gomes and
Senator Gomes from Bridgeport.
and Wallingford.
Did you
Gave
have any
him
help
an
from
honor.
your New Haven group? From
What's his name?
New Haven, Senator Martin Looney, Tony Walker, Tony Harp.
Tony Harp, the
Yes.
two Tonys. One
Yes.
of them is the state senator, and the
Yes,
other one is the
the
state
representative.
representative, both from New Haven.
Mhm.
So they were all helping you get
Yes.
this bill passed.
Yes.
And how many committees did it have to go through? Do you remember?
It went through a ton of committees. I don't even remember the
It's very
process.
complicated up there,
Yes.
isn't it?
Larry Butler. Sorry.
Larry Butler. Okay,
Yes, sorry.
good.
Mm-hmm.
He was
And
strong
so
for us.
at the end of the day, when this was last year that this was passed?
Yes.
Now, had you passed it before?
We brought it before Governor Rell, and she wouldn't.
And
She
and
didn't pass
vetoed it.
Yes, she vetoed it.
She vetoed it, but
Mhm.
but it was
Brought
then
it-
passed last year, and Governor Malloy signed it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, but we didn't let it end when she vetoed it.
We kept fighting.
We kept fighting. We actually protested. You know, had in front of the mansion actually,
Really?
Yeah.
singing Christmas songs dedicated around housing.
Uh-huh.
You know, and
Change the words.
yeah, we just changed the words like to let her know that it was important to us, and you have to do what you have to do,
Right.
to help change happen.
Yes. Do you think that made a difference for her?
I would hope that she didn't change the law, but
Uh-huh.
I'm hoping that she could see the importance of it to the people who she represented.
So you just mentioned that you went to the governor's mansion when Governor Rell was still there, that you had people singing Christmas carols and you changed the words to be more appropriate for housing needs. So that's a kind of a direct action, taking direct action. It's a little bit different from going to a committee. Can you tell me about other direct actions that you've done?
We went up with a big sign that everyone had signed, and we went to her office to speak to her and let her know. And at that time, it was another news cast that was there, and we wind up on the news with our visit to the Capitol where she was. So we've written letters, we've done calls, we've done many different things to try to get her to understand. We went to the Capitol, to Hartford. We did many things that would try to let her know that it was important to the people that this would happen. But and it almost passed. It did pass, but then when she vetoed it, we lost by one vote. And it just happened that particular town, was it Wallingford, I believe was it was might have been, but that one town was the one town that had the election for a resident commissioner before the law even took place.
So you can see how important it is to work in a variety of ways. I mean, you got something passed, the governor vetoed it, it then failed by one vote to be overridden. So it really does matter who's working for you and what you do. So what are you looking to do now? You've got the new law passed so that resident commissioners can be elected by the people who live in the units. What else are you looking to do?
We
now?
also got passed the revitalization bill.
Let's talk about that.
Revitalization bill, it gives residents a right to be at the decision-making table with the local housing authority.
Okay.
So they would have a voice in the direction of their future as far as their housing is concerned.
Right. And there is a project that's on the drawing boards here in Norwalk.
Yeah.
And
Choice neighborhoods.
Choice neighborhoods, and they're going to redevelop a whole housing project. They're going to tear it down and to build another one. Do you know about that, Daisy?
Yeah, I serve on some of the working committees. I've attended some of the working committees, but that bill is really important to the residents because it puts them at the table. Not that they'll be sitting around the table being told what's going to happen, but they really should. They have a real voice. That's what that bill is intended to do, to let a resident to be able to not just say we would like to have services, or we would like to be able to, have not severe screening with a right to return back to the place once they lived there when it was going down. Now you're rebuilding it. We would like to live back there. So with the revitalization, and really the purpose that we're here for is so that residents and people would know about these bills and that they were using, because we won these bills and we want them to be used. You know, it was a good victory, but it's not a victory if they're not using them or aware of them and making use of them.
So Alberta, what do you do to make sure that people understand now that you've had the victory and you can use it?
We inform them. We inform them that these bills were passed and they have the right. And a lot of residents, even a lot of towns are not familiar with these bills. A lot of towns, cities and towns around Connecticut, they're not familiar with them. And who knows, they might go try to appoint a resident commissioner, and they can't do that. They have to be elected by the residents.
Do you find that the towns are resistant to having the tenants more actively involved in running the units?
Well, some of the towns are a little reluctant, but New Haven, where I'm from, they're all for residents' participation.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Likewise with Norwalk.
Okay, so that's good to know. And you also, Alberta, you're a member of the Democratic Town Committee.
Yes, I am.
So you're, in fact, you're a co-chair of the ward.
Yes.
So how many Democrats live in your ward?
We have about close to 4,000 people because I represent the downtown area.
Wow, okay.
Yes.
So you've got political power outside of PHRN.
Yes.
You're working both sides of the street here.
Yes. And I'm also a delegate for the state of Connecticut.
To the state convention?
Yes.
Okay. And Daisy, are you also, you're active beyond PHRN. I read off some things that you're doing, like the NAACP and some other organizations. How do those work together for you?
Well, I'm also part of Working Family Party, which is a political party as well, which work for working families, which are the same group of people that I deal with housing. The NAACP, all that I'm dealing with is housing low-income people, trying to make sure not only low-income people, but anyone when it comes to housing, because some people don't always live in public and federal or Section 8 housing. Some own homes. Some are, middle class. And when it comes to housing, you want people to be able to have decent, affordable housing.
Right.
You want their rights to be protected. So that's how they all work together for me. I can use them when it comes to the civil rights. I can use it when it comes to the federal laws. I can use and have other people help advocate for it because I don't stand alone.
And you just put an article up on your Facebook page, because PHRN has a Facebook page, and you put an article up about how unaffordable housing is in Connecticut. And one of the things that I was surprised to see is that it's just so expensive here compared to the rest of the country, and that Stamford and Norwalk apparently is one of the most expensive rental markets in the entire country.
Yeah, you need more than 2 jobs to live here and have a 2-bedroom apartment. You need more than 2 jobs to be able to afford to have a 2-bedroom apartment here. And with the National Low Income Housing, they have a thing called outreach, and they did it nationally to see how housing worked. We came in the 7th place, Connecticut, and like you said, Norwalk and Stamford was the Stamford's the second, Norwalk is the first for the highest place in Fairfield County to live.
So what does someone do when they don't, when they're finding it difficult to have enough money to rent an apartment? How do they get into federal housing? What sort of help is available to them?
Well, you have to apply for public federal housing. You might be able to get rental assistance, which is RAP. It's a state-funded rental assistance program. Some people have that, along with the federal Section 8 program.
Yeah, and it's hard because some people have to live with their family members or live with them, like their kids go back with their mothers, or it's difficult for people to try to have to live and not be able to afford to live here. A lot of them that have lived here since they've been little, go to college and want to come back. If they can't stay with a relative or friend or bunk up like 4 or 5 together, you may find them leaving the state, and you want them to come back. You want your young people to come back and be able to give. You don't want your older people who've worked here all their life to have to leave because now you know, maybe one of their better half may have left, you know, died, or and you're left alone now, and you can't afford to pay the taxes or the different things that come with owning a home. So it's not easy. It's not easy. People, and it's a waiting list to be on these federal and state programs. So sometimes you may have to wait 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 years before you can get on it.
Is that the same in New Haven?
Yes, New Haven waiting list is about 5,000 plus.
Wow. So, we have any idea how long it would take to get into public housing if you're on that waiting list?
If you're lucky, public housing, it's
A little sooner.
it's kind of tough because they're trying to relocate a lot of people. They're doing the revitalization project in New Haven, and they have to relocate a lot of people. So they have to place those people before they bring new residents in.
Right, and here in Norwalk with the Washington Village, when that goes into revitalization, they'll have to find some place to put all of those people temporarily, tear down the building, and build a new one.
Yeah, and they also giving vouchers to those mobile vouchers where people can take them and go wherever they want to go. So that's another way that they're doing it. But in Norwalk, they are planning to have the 1-for-1. For every unit they tear down, they will put another affordable unit at 30% area income.
And they're also, if I understand things correctly, guaranteeing that the people who were in the units before can come back.
Yes.
So they're not going to be sent to some other place and destroy the community while they rebuild a building.
No, they are going. They have said that anyone that wants to come back can, but they will have a screening, but they are doing what they can to try to make sure people come back. But I just wanted to make sure we have 2 board members, and we mentioned in our towns, but we have Meriden that also had some revitalization taking place up there. We have New Britain that also having revitalization with the PHRN members. One of our PHRN members was when the governor made his announcement about his commitment to housing with the $300 million going with a commitment with the 10 years. One of the women that was standing there with him was a PHRN member. So I just wanted to put that out there. You know, it's not just Norwalk or New Haven that we can speak for our towns, but we do have other towns that are also represented.
Well, we'll put the website up on the screen so that people can see that and ways to contact you guys. I think there's a very clear message here, is that there's an organization that's there to help, that needs people to join and to get involved and to be active in the community, and that change is possible.
And that they make a difference.
They make a difference.
The residents do make a difference, and they have that things in place that give them a right to. They have to participate. Like we first said, with the $5 membership, that's good, but we need you as well. You know,
bodies there.
Yeah, the body, people, residents make a difference. People make a difference.
Well, you're making a difference, and I was so pleased for you to come in and to talk with us, because this is really important. I mean, the people, this last few years have been very tough in this economy, and the people that you're working with, I know, are having a hard time and need to pull together and make sure that their voices are heard. You can't ever give up.
Yes.
So thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, John. Can I shake your hand?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing us to have this time.
And now, a Stream of Conscience book review with Anne Galloway.
In Cities Under Siege, Stephen Graham describes how far we've descended since Eisenhower's warning about the dangers of a military-industrial complex. He addresses the history and implications of increasingly familiar rhetoric and actions associated with what is called the War on Terror. Many of these actions are very troubling, particularly the intense focus and hugely expensive investment in homeland monitoring and surveillance, all without any apparent need for a warrant. New tools are increasing the militarization of urban life. Systems for electronically tolling highways and urban road systems have morphed into urban counter-terrorist screens protecting security zones. The internet is appropriated as a global system of financial and civil surveillance. Logistics change, sustaining global trade and airplane travel, have been reorganized to achieve permanent profiling and targeting. Mobile phones and passports are fitted with microchip tags used as tracking devices. Meteoric growth is expected in key sectors of the new control technologies. Global consolidation is creating an oligopoly of massive market-dominated transnational security corporations. Coalitions between governments and corporate interests are running rampant and are beyond scrutiny. Large government contracts and generous subsidies provide for homeland security research and development. Surveillance venues are proliferating. Homeland security spending has grown to almost $70 billion a year, up 300% from 2001 when adjusted for inflation, and more than 10 times the Pentagon's increase. Certainly 9/11 provided a wake-up call that suggested we needed to get better at assessing legitimate risk factors. Nevertheless, it is fair to ask what approaches are both legitimate and cost-effective, and which ones may be a consequence of something more sinister. Graham's book examines some familiar themes and one significant demographic factor to explain the current environment. Notions of different racial worth, which help shape the rationale for Western colonialism, have been important foundations for the War on Terror. These notions have permitted some human bodies to be more easily and appropriately humiliated, imprisoned, shackled, starved, and destroyed than others. Discourses on terrorism sustain the values of we versus those others, reinforcing differential labeling of human worth. The mainstream media often characterizes many urban dwellers as threatening others. Portrayals of African American inner city youth are strikingly similar to those being described as distant terrorists who are targeted by our imperial wars. Thus, by association, foreign danger is associated with events taking place right in our cities. Shock and Awe was a carefully staged media event in which hundreds of thousands of civilian deaths and maimings through collateral damage became non-events requiring obfuscation. Meanwhile, direct intervention from the Pentagon military action in movies and right-wing TV became ads for the military, whose public affairs offices have reinforced the concept of a war on terror. Military simulation, information warfare, news and entertainment also add to this mindset. When coupled with another phenomenon, it is easier to see how these militaristic views have gained such a foothold. We now have a volunteer fighting force, military personnel deployed overwhelmingly from ex-urban and rural bases. In a section of Graham's book entitled Enemy Territory, the Neocon Christian Right and the U.S. City, we get a picture of what is described as retro America versus metro America. Urban America is under siege by city-hating, highly religious, hyper-nationalist, and often extremely racist reactionaries from rural landscapes. Widespread propaganda suggesting that cities must be targeted and pacified through military power is more likely to gain traction from this increasingly rural makeup of recruits. Graham calls this rural soldiers conducting urban wars, in which many religious fundamentalists and neoconservatives describe U.S. cities in language remarkably similar to that employed by Al-Qaeda. The relentless militarization of everyday life can be resisted, but this takes more than simple demystification. The best part of this book comes at the end, as Graham provides excellent examples of tactics average citizens can employ to fight this militarization. Reimagining security makes it possible to influence outcomes such that safety does not need to depend upon launching boundless and perpetual colonial wars against continually targeted others. Read this book and join the struggle. There is no lack of opposition, but rather dissent is disorganized. Working together, we can reverse this dangerous drift in which our cities are becoming the next battleground in the so-called War on Terror. This has been a Stream of Conscience book review. I am Ann Galloway. Thank you for watching.
That's our show for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. You can find all our shows on YouTube by going to youtube.com/user/DFATVnet. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. Or you can send comments or suggestions for a show to info@dfa-tv.net. If you'd like to learn more about progressive political action, we meet at 7 p.m. on the first Wednesday of the month at the Silver Star Diner in Norwalk. We'd love to have you join us. Remember, change is possible, and you can make it happen. This has been Stream of Conscience, and I'm your host, John Hartwell. Thanks for watching.